Thanks for having me, Josh.
All right, so first off, what kind of guy are we talking about here? We seem to get a lot of lies, fabrications, and I mean, there's a specific type of person in politics who would do something like this.
Well, certainly we see patterns of politicians lying quite a bit about a variety of matters, but with George Santos, there is pretty good track record demonstrating he's taking it to the next level. So I study, along with my fellow researcher Drew Curtis. We just wrote a book called Pathological Lying, and in that book we examine pathological liars in many different professional fields, including politics. And so George Santos seems to kind of fit the bill in that regard.
Does it almost seem like, I know we say politicians sometimes lie, people all over the place will tell lies, but in this case, it is just a little bit different, right?
It is. When we look at lying in the general population, what we find is that a very small subset of people do most of the lying. So it turns out that most people are honest most of the time. If we ask people, for example, how many lies have you told in the past 24 hours, most people say zero. A little bit more people will say one. But we find that there are some people who say, I've told 20 lies in the past 24 hours. And so it turns out that about 5 to 10% of people end up telling about 50% of the lies that are told. And so when we look at people like George Santos, who have a long history of prolific lying, it seems to suggest maybe he belongs to that small subset of extremely prolific liars.
Would you refer to him, because I've heard this mentioned so many times, as possibly a pathological liar?
The way that the term pathological lying is used in the popular vernacular generally just means someone who lies a whole lot. As psychologists, when we think of pathological lying, you think of it as more of a mental health disorder. And so, in order for us to say someone is a pathological liar, we would need to see, first of all, they're lying a whole lot. So, he certainly meets that criterion. But we also want to see that the lying is causing distress in the person's life. That is, it's causing them a lot of negative feelings. They're trying to stop. It's also compulsive. That is, it's outside of their control, causes a lot of problems in their life. So he may or may not meet those criteria. But there's other mental health disorders that have pathological lying as one of the elements. One is antisocial personality disorder. And with antisocial personality disorder, people engage in a lifelong pattern of acting in extremely manipulative ways in which they're taking advantage of others, often through the use of deception, and typically without any remorse or guilt.
So I guess I'm just going to guess here that a lot of people, especially in psychiatry and psychology, are probably going to be almost studying this whole situation. I don't know if you agree here, but so many people, especially in those fields, seem to be paying close attention as this keeps on developing, and we hear more and more about George Santos.
I agree. I think anytime we see someone getting a lot of news attention for their dishonesty, a lot of focus, especially from people who are interested in mental health, start to pay attention. So whether we're looking at con artists or people like Bernie Madoff or Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos, we have these individuals that really rise up in the news exposure they're getting because of their dishonesty. And so people like me and my co-author Drew Curtis, who like to focus on these types of people, really start to pay attention.
And I know in politics, as we talked about it a little bit earlier, there's always a little bit of lying, as there is in just about every aspect of life. I would almost say pretty much everyone tells a lie, right? This isn't just specific to one type of person. Just about everyone out there, whether they want to admit it or not, does lie.
Yeah, in our research, when we ask people, have you lied over the past week? About 95% of people across studies say, yes, I've lied at least once over the past week. So most people lie, but to varying degrees. And what we find with politicians is that politicians, just based on their personalities, they are just as honest as typical people are. That is, it's not the case that dishonest people migrate into politics. What seems to be happening is relatively honest people move into the field of politics, and then the demands of the occupation drive them to dishonesty. And what we find is that politicians who are willing to lie are actually more likely to be reelected.
Which is so interesting to think about, because then it calls into question a lot of different things, but also, the party they're representing. A lot of people do look at them a little bit closer and say, why exactly aren't you doing anything about this? We did learn, of course, yesterday that he is going to step down temporarily from those House committee assignments, but not sure if he will join them once again. So much to this conversation. So, Chris Hart, I do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Is there anything else you want to add about all of this before I let you go?
Well, I think it'll probably come as no surprise that the more that liars are tolerated in our national politics, the lower the opinion of politicians becomes and the less trust people have in our institutions.
Makes complete sense to me. Thank you so much once again for taking the time to talk to us about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good talking with you.